Listen closely. If you stand in the center of the Ruhr Valley in Germany today, on this freezing morning of December 3rd, 2025, you can hear something terrifying. Silence. For 100 years, this was the beating heart of European industry. It was the roar of blast furnaces, the hum of chemical plants, the relentless rhythm of the assembly lines that built the Mercedes, the BMWs, the machinery that ran the world. Today, the furnaces are cold. The assembly lines are still. The silence you hear is the sound of a superpower committing suicide. We're watching an economic autopsy in real time. What is happening in Europe right now isn't a recession. It isn't a downturn. It is de-industrialization. It is the intentional dismantling of the most sophisticated manufacturing base in human history. And the tragic part, they did it to themselves. They applauded while they turned off the lights. To understand why your heating bill is up 200% and why the Made in Germany label is disappearing, you have to go back to 1944. There was a plan called the Morgenthau Plan. The Allies proposed that after the war, Germany should be stripped of all industry and turned into a purely agricultural state, a nation of farmers too weak to ever threaten the world again. That plan was rejected in 1945 because the West needed a strong Germany to fight the Soviets. But here we are, 80 years later, and the European leaders have implemented the Morgenthau Plan on themselves. The German economic miracle, the Wirtschaftswunder, was built on a very simple equation. It wasn't just German engineering genius. It was a trade. Germany bought cheap energy from Russia, used it to manufacture high-quality goods, and sold those goods to the world at a premium. Cheap gas in, expensive cars out. That was the margin. That was the wealth of Europe. In 2022, that equation was destroyed. When the Nord Stream pipelines were blown up, an act of industrial terrorism that everyone knows the culprit of but is too polite to name, the lifeline was cut. Europe was forced to stop buying cheap gas from the East and start buying expensive LNG, liquefied natural gas, from the West, specifically from the United States. Do the math. If you are a chemical giant like BASF and your energy costs in Germany are 4 times higher than your competitors' energy costs in Texas or Shanghai, you have no choice. You can't just be more efficient. You are dead. So what did they do? They left. BASF, the largest chemical producer in the world, is scaling down in Germany and building massive plants in China. Volkswagen is investing billions in North America. The jobs are leaving, and they are never coming back. This is what degrowth actually looks like. The academics in Brussels and Davos talk about green transition and net zero as if it's a utopia. They tell you that wind and solar will replace the baseload power of coal, gas, and nuclear. It is a lie. You cannot run a steel mill on windmills. You cannot run a modern industrial economy on intermittent power. When you shut down your nuclear plants, like Germany insanely did, and you cut off your gas supply, you don't get a green utopia. You get poverty. Europe is becoming a museum. It is becoming a theme park for American and Chinese tourists, a place with nice architecture, good food and history, but no future. The old continent is now just that, old. The young and ambitious are leaving. The capital is fleeing. The euro is becoming a currency backed by nothing but regulation and nostalgia. And who won? Look at the balance of trade. The United States is now the world's largest oil and gas producer. We sell our LNG to Europe at a massive markup. We sell our weapons to Europe to defend against the threat that cut off the gas. Europe is no longer a partner. Europe is a customer, a vassal state that pays protection money to Washington in the form of energy contracts and defense spending. This didn't happen by accident. It was a hostile takeover disguised as an alliance. The United States exported its inflation to Europe and imported Europe's industrial base. We hollowed them out, and the European leaders, the technocrats in Brussels, smiled and thanked us for the privilege. So why does this matter to you, sitting in your living room in 2025? Because this is the canary in the coal mine for the entire West. The price of energy is the price of life. Everything you eat, everything you wear, everything you own is essentially frozen energy. When energy becomes expensive, life becomes expensive. The inflation you are feeling is just energy scarcity disguised as money printing. The cold crisis is not just about temperature. It is about the cold reality that the era of abundance is over. The era of cheap energy, global supply chains, and peace is dead. We are entering an era of resource nationalism. If you don't control your own energy, you don't control your own destiny. What is happening to Germany is a warning. No nation is too rich to fail. No industry is too big to leave. If you enact policies that defy the laws of physics and economics, you will freeze in the dark. This winter, as you look at your heating bill, remember, this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. They chose to deindustrialize. They chose to make you poorer to save a climate reputation that China and India are laughing at. You need to become your own power plant. You need to become your own supply chain, because the grid is flickering, the factories are closing, and the people in charge are more interested in managing the decline than reversing it. Europe is the ghost of our future if we don't wake up. The lights are going out in Berlin. Don't let them go out in your house. I am the architect, and I will see you tomorrow.